Hello there, and welcome to the seventh episode of Magic the Judging, where we teach you to be a better judge. And this time, our topic is going to be all about priority. Hello to everybody out there. Priority, right? Well, priority is an interesting subject when you talk about the Magic rules, because it's something that's kind of mentioned all over the place in the comprehensive rules. It's got a bit kind of scattered all over the place. There is a decent section of rules. I had it up on the screen just a minute ago whilst I was talking to the guys in chat. It was Rule 116 if you're playing at home with the comprehensive rules up. I went to rules.wizards.com and searched for all the rules that mentioned priority, which is why I realised that it's actually scattered all over the place. Including the Grand Melee variant, which is actually why I looked it up, because I got asked a question about that on Twitter. But we'll get back to that. I have just a few things to show you first. I actually had some photos that I took as part of judging at GP Madrid, and I don't think I shared these with you before. This is entirely random, but it's a pistachio shell with googly eyes. You can see some magic cards in the background. That makes it topical because there's magic cards in the background. But I think this is living proof, or kind of dead proof. It's proof in some sense that everything's better with googly eyes. If you have not been to, and I'm typing the URL into the chat for you, if you've not been to Magic Cards with Googly Eyes, I think it's .com. Did that work? Did the link come up in the chat? My chat isn't scrolling. Oh. Haha, fine. Whew, boom. MagicCardsWithGooglyEyes.com. It's amazing. I had another couple of... Can someone tell me, if you click on the link, does it open up a website and also not interrupt the stream? Because that would be really awesome if that happened. Because I would like things like that. Would make me far happier about pasting links in whilst I'm chatting. Anyway, I was part of the Twitter team for GP Madrid. So I took a few photos, posted them to Twitter, doing posts. Here was one of the things. This was 3/4 of the sealed product that was being used in one half, I believe, of the GP in Madrid. That's quite a lot of product, as I'm sure you'll agree. Oh, you can't click on. Do I need to HTTP it to make it a proper link? Let's try that. Magic Cards with Googly Eyes.com. Try that one. And there was a call recently for people who would be interested in doing the Twitter feed for GP Manchester, and I'm being told Simon Johnson's on it. Brilliant! I love him. He was one of my favourite judging Twitter celebrities back before I got on Twitter and worked out what it was all about. Oh, needs the www. Darn. Never mind. Okay, so much link fail. But yes, this was 3/4 of one half of the product we used in GP Madrid, which was pretty cool. I had a photo of a judge off duty, or is it a planeswalker off duty? I can't really tell. It's one or the other. I was certainly surprised to kind of blink as I realised one of the judges who'd just gone off duty to come back in this beautiful thing. MagicCardsWithGooglyEyes.tumblr.com. URL fail. Yes. Needs a Tumblr part in order to work. Fine. My mistake. Cool. Well, I'm glad that kind of thing works anyway. That's cool. And just this is a photo of a deck check in progress. You can see the deck lists at the top of the picture and a whole bunch of cards. This was part of the Legacy tournament. I tweeted this out with a question of how many. No, the question was who needs English card names? How many of these cards can you actually recognise from the artwork, from like the general look of the card, without even being able to see the name? And I was pleasantly surprised that being Legacy, being quite such a open format in terms of what cards are available in the card pool, I was quite pleased at how many I actually recognised. So that's something for you to entertain yourselves with. Certainly better than digging your claws into a pillow and ripping it up, which is what I came home to the other day. That's an X pillow by my dog there. Yeah, nice. Right. I am willing to bet that you cannot actually read the text on this flowchart because it's pretty. I'm pasting a URL. I can't speak at the same time. For some reason, my ability to multitask has gone a bit. That's an actual URL. Hopefully that's clickable. That will go back to an article I wrote for Star City Games, part of the Justice League series, which will... it was back in October of 2009 that I wrote that one, and it was all about priority, and that's what I'm going through for this stream mainly. I'm essentially using it as a script, and it's got the this flowchart halfway down it. You might be able to read this one because I've upped the bandwidth. I've upped my bandwidth settings, and everything seems to be working a little bit better. But text in this format is always a bit tricky. So yeah, if you scroll down, you can. If you click the link that I've popped into the chat, it's at starcitygames.com. Well, actually, the easiest thing to do is Google for Paul Smith priority. That's how I found it. It's article 18157 on the Star City site. And this picture of a flowchart is about halfway down the article. I've got to give credit to somebody for this one. I believe it was Lee Sharp. I think it was Lee Sharp that created this one, who I believe now works in some sense to do with Magic Online, which is a cool progression for him. Yeah, he put this flowchart together of what happens with priority. When does state-based actions and triggered abilities and so on, when does this all fit in? So, whether you can read it or not, I'm going to give it a go to go over this bit. It says that, first of all, you check for and apply all state-based effects. I suppose we have to start somewhere. Check for and apply all state-based effects, because that's what they were called back in 2009 when I wrote this article. Of course, they're state-based actions now, as everybody who watched episode 1 of this stream will know. Have I actually mentioned episode 1 of this stream in every single episode of this stream? I reckon I probably have. I've set myself up for some kind of tradition there that I feel like I've got to keep going. Yes, state-based actions are checked right before a player would receive priority. We get into a bit of a loop here. Do any new state-based actions apply? So the green line, if they do, takes you right back to the start. You check and apply all state-based effects. Do any new ones apply? If they do, you keep going around until there's none left to apply. Once you've applied them all, we ask, have any abilities triggered? And if they have, they get put onto the stack in active player, non-active player order, and then we go back and check state-based actions again. And if we get through with no state-based actions and no abilities triggering, then the active player's got a choice. They can either pass priority or play a spell or ability. And if they choose to play, if they choose to play something, then we've got to go through the loop again. We've got to start again. We've got to go back to state-based actions and go, have we got any state-based actions? Have any abilities triggered? Add stuff to the stack. Get the choice again to pass priority or play a spell or ability. Until finally the active player chooses to pass priority. At which point we go, well, that's one player dealt with. Let's go over to the non-active side. So the purple part, the left-hand side, purpley-bluey part of the flowchart just deals with the active players part of this. Then we flip over to the pink side, we've got the non-active player, and it says pretty much the same thing as it just says non-active player in the appropriate places. We check for and apply all state-based effects, and we keep doing that until there are no state-based actions left to apply. We check for any abilities that were triggered, and we add them to the stack, and the non-active player gets a chance to pass priority or do something. And if they do something, they retain priority to do something again, and so on, until they pass priority. And eventually we get to a point where both players pass priority. And at that point, we wonder whether the stack is empty or not. If the stack isn't empty, that means there's something on the stack that needs to resolve, so we resolve it. If the stack is empty, that means we finish the current step or phase, and we move on with some part of the turn. the amazing thing about this flowchart is this is happening all the time. You're always somewhere on this flowchart. Now, admittedly, the box that says the top object on this stack resolves can be fairly complicated. Like in the case of something like Fact or Fiction or Warp World, there's actually a lot going on in there. Yeah, you're in this loop all the time, and you go round this loop multiple times a turn, multiple times per action. You're just constantly looping around this stuff. But the interesting thing is that you never know this. Really, you don't think in this way. You don't think in this flowcharted way of this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens. You have an intuitive sense of I want to do something, or my opponent wants to do something. And when you end up with a clash, when lots of things happen at once, that's when you have to kind of break it down and go, right, okay, let's stop, back to baby steps. Let's take it one step at a time and work through this. Let's nip back to the start of my priority article and see what we were doing. Why do we have priority at all? What's the point in priority? The point of priority is to allow quite a complex game to not devolve into a fight, as far as I'm concerned. In a game of Magic, I'm pretty much reading from my old article now. This is how brilliant my old article was, and certainly not how unprofessional my current streaming self is. In a game of Magic, especially in multiplayer, the game can seem somewhat hectic, and indeed that's what attracted me to Magic in the first place, I'll be honest. I downloaded it was a Magic Online based tutorial for the game, and I was absolutely hooked when I realised there was all sorts of tricks you could do with a card called Fleeting Image, I think it was. It was a blue card in one of the theme decks back then that you could do stuff with it, and it had an activated ability that bounced it back to your hand. It could bounce itself back to your hand, and you could do tricks with it. It was amazing. That hooked me on the game. But anyway, the other part of Magic that's hugely complex but hugely entertaining is the fact that instants exist. The fact that you have these spells that, and as you would probably explain to a new player, like colloquially, you say, instants, yeah, you can cast them at any time. Now, it's kind of natural to ask, if I've got instants that I can cast at any time, and you've got instants that you can cast at any time, then, well, how do we actually deal with things? And when you say any time, do you really mean at any time? And that's what this whole timing and priority system is about. That's the whole point of this, is to resolve conflicts about who wants to play what and when. I'll put Raging Goblin up on the screen because I want to walk you through the first turn. So there is a classic question that we used to ask back in the day. I haven't heard it so much recently, but when we wanted to know whether somebody really knew their stuff, they knew their rules. This is back in the day when the standard to be a level 1 judge was a little bit harder than it is in the current days. One of the things we would do to check if you knew what you were talking about was we'd ask you random questions like, can you name all the state-based effects? Too many of them now, and now they're called state-based actions anyway. But one of the other questions we might ask was, how many times do you pass priority in the first turn? And this encompasses quite a lot of rules, you may not believe, but anyway. I'll leave that as the question for you. I think I might have mentioned this in the previous stream anyway, but here you go. I'll give you as a question. I won't answer it until a little bit later. How many times, let's assume that the player going first drops a Mountain and a Raging Goblin and attacks with it. How many times does each player pass priority? And I'm also going to assume that in any format where one player is playing Raging Goblin, that the player the other side of the table is not going to be holding like Force of Will or something. You don't have to worry about what cards are in the other player's hand. Just start the game. Mountain, Raging Goblin, in for 1. How many times did I actually pass priority? And then I will walk you through it. So we'll get to the real answer in a moment, but whilst you're thinking about it, I'll just walk you through it. So who has priority at any moment? At the beginning of the game. What? No gut shot? Oh, gut shot. Yes. Curse you, gut shot. Yes, no gut shot. No actual, real, playable cards in this made-up scenario. At the beginning of the game, we're in player A's untap step. And as you can imagine, it's highly unlikely that player A's got any tap permanents or anything to phase at this point, so because we just began the game. Although, of course, there are variants that care about this. If you've ever played Vanguard, which is a Magic Online format that has you essentially have an avatar in play, not in play, in the command zone, which has some kind of ability that affects the whole of the game. Some avatars, I think, you should do something in the upkeep or something along those lines. And it's important to know that you definitely do have an upkeep on the first turn. Anyway, we start in the untap step. Who has priority in player A's untap step at the beginning of the game? Nobody does. Have I got? I'm just double checking that my comprehensive rule examples are my numbering is up to date. Yeah, it basically is. Cool. 502.3 is a rule about the untap step. It says that no player receives priority during the untap step. The untap step is the first step of the beginning phase of the game. And nobody has priority in it. You can't just do it. So the step just ends. You just move on. And you move to the upkeep step. Who gets priority in player A's upkeep step? Oh, player A does. And in fact, this is a general rule, 115.3, for those of you looking them up at home. 115.3 says that the active player always gets priority first. So any time in the turn that we're going to give a player priority, we give it to active player first. And the non-active player can only get involved when the active player is done with what they want to do. Pardon me. So again, player A is unlikely to want to do anything in their first upkeep step. It's not impossible. I'm being told that playing Flash Hulk off of 2 Elvish Spirit Guides or something along those lines. 2 guides? You can't flash off of 2 guides. There's no blue guide. You've only got green and red, haven't you? Someone's probably going to tell me about a way I could do it, but anyway. So yes, we get through we're in the upkeep step, and A passes priority. But we can't get out of the upkeep step by ourselves. So you have to pass priority to player B just in case they want to do something. And then, because they don't want to do anything, they pass priority straight back. We do 2 priority passes in succession without anything happening between. And because the stack was empty, that ends the step. With the upkeep step finished, we can move on to the draw step. I've mentioned here, like I say passing priority a lot. Passing priority is just it's magic-ese, it's magic language for just saying, I don't want to do anything right now. Hey, how about you? If you want to do something, you go right ahead. After we've got through the upkeep, so both players are passed priority without doing anything in between in the upkeep, then we would begin the draw step and have player A draw a card in most turns. Who would have priority? Well, again, whilst you're in the action of drawing a card, no one has priority. You can't do anything at that point. So when I said earlier that instants were spells that you could cast at any time, then I was only slightly lying. Obviously, there are times that you can't do anything. While someone's in the middle of an action, a turn-based action, that's one of the times that you can't cast instants. Can't be done. On the first turn, however, none of this matters because on the first turn, the player going first skips their draw step in 2-player games and in 2-headed giant games, but not in multiplayer formats which I think also includes Archenemy. Does the Archenemy go first and draw? Oh, obscure format knowledge. I don't know. I don't remember. And so we're going to skip, because we're skipping the draw step, because it's a two-player game, we're going to skip the draw step, and we go directly from the upkeep to the main phase. Again, in the comprehensive rules, I've got written down that it's 500.11, 500.11. It says, it asks, is there any time to do anything in between the two phases? Like, whilst we're going from the upkeep to the main phase, can we do anything then? No, you can't. You're in one phase or you're in the next. There's no in-between time. And at last we get to the main phase. There isn't anything special that happens at the beginning of the main phase. It's just a time when you can do things. Notably, in the main phase, that's when sorceries are switched on. In the main phase, on your turn, whilst the stack is empty, that's sorcery time. I've had enough of looking at Raging Goblin. I'm going to pop back to me. Hello, I'm back. Did I mention the lack of beard? That's the only time I mention it. Right, yes. So for the purposes of our example, player A is going to execute a special action at this point. There are 6 of them. I won't list them all out right now. Someone in chat probably will, just as a challenge. One of the 6 special actions that you can take is to play a basic land. Playing a basic land, or playing a land at all, is a special action that does not use the stack. We haven't gone into that much detail about the stack. Yeah, because I haven't done the one about playing spells. That's the classic stream that I haven't done, the classic judge topic about how you play a spell. I haven't done that one. That's why I haven't talked about the stack much. But playing a land, being a special action, it doesn't use the stack. As far as the game is concerned, you have a land in hand, and you go directly to having a land in play. There's no intervening state. There's no priority pass. Nothing happens at all. That's actually vaguely interesting. You play the land without passing priority at all. So player A still has priority after playing the land. So with their retained priority, they want to cast a Raging Goblin. So you... Crikey, I thought I was funny when I wrote this article, didn't I? For a hasty creature, this process actually happens a lot more slowly. As far as the game is concerned, lands come into play really quickly. Creatures are a little bit slower. So I want to cast a Raging Goblin. You go through all the motions required for playing a spell, and after you've done that, there'd be a Raging Goblin on the stack, but who has priority as soon as the Raging Goblin's on the stack? But it's still player A. And there's an interesting point here. I'm going to switch back to Raging Goblin. Slightly interesting point here is that the rules, in the comprehensive rules, if you look at 115.3c, that says that the same player has priority after casting a spell. So Raging Goblin's on the stack, and I've got priority to do something more if I want to. But the tournament rules say something different. The tournament rules say that ordinarily a player won't want to do something with that priority that they retain after casting a spell. And so we assume that unless stated otherwise, there's an implicit priority pass when you cast a spell, not when you resolve a spell, when you cast a spell. So if I go Raging Goblin, then let's put back to the camera because if I don't have a magic card around me, that's a booster pack. If I need a magic card in my hand to do this properly. If I go Raging Goblin, it's actually Goblin Welder, it's close enough. If I go Raging Goblin, especially with that question mark kind of inflection at the end, it's kind of obvious that what I'm doing, without explicitly saying, cast Raging Goblin, pass priority to you, sir, it's quite clear that's what I'm doing. I am passing priority. So that's what the tournament rules say. If I go Raging Goblin, then I'm passing priority over to you. I have to explicitly go, Raging Goblin, wait, I still want to retain priority, if that's in fact what I want to do. And I've just remembered that there's a card that really cares about that. So I am going to hop to magiccards.info. I wonder if anyone can tell me what card I'm thinking of before I even get there. there's a card, it's an artifact, and it really, really cares about the fact that you retain priority after you've cast something. After you've cast something or activated an ability. It is a cannon made by the goblins. It's called Goblin Cannon. And I should be able to just drop this picture in here, switch to turn the sound back on. And there we go. Here is a card that really cares about the fact that that I retain priority. If I didn't retain priority, this card wouldn't work. What it says is that for 2 mana, I can deal 1 damage to somebody, and then I've got to sacrifice the cannon. That looks like a really bad deal, doesn't it? You pay 4 mana to put this artifact into play, then 2 mana to activate it, I get 1 damage, and I've sacrificed my cannon. That's it, I'm done. Yeah, that would be a really bad deal if that was all you could do with it. Because if I activate the ability and I pass priority and my opponent passes back, then this is going to resolve. So it's important that I retain priority so I can activate the ability again. I can keep activating it. If I've got access to 10 mana, I can go activate this for 1 damage, in response activate it again, in response activate it again. In fact, I'm going to retain priority and activate it 5 times. Now I'm going to pass. And then when you pass, you'll take a damage. And I pass and you pass and you'll take a damage. And I pass and you pass and you'll take a damage. Now the first one of these abilities to have resolved will have caused me to sacrifice the Goblin Cannon, but that doesn't stop the other abilities already on the stack from resolving, because, as we all know, abilities are independent of their source once they're on the stack, and they can resolve even if the source has long gone. We use last known information if we need to get there. If you play on Magic Online, I believe that client also assumes that you're passing priority after casting a spell or activating an ability, unless you explicitly retain priority. Only it's slightly harder on Magic Online to explicitly retain priority because you've got no one to talk to. So you do it by holding down the control key, I believe. It might be left control, I'm not sure. There's a button anyway. If you've ever had this happen to you in Magic Online, then you'll realise that it's quite a painful experience, and you learn quickly afterwards that retaining priority is sometimes important. Okay, so having passed priority with Raging Goblin on the stack, and it should be obvious that there's a priority pass involved here, otherwise counterspells could never work, right? How could a counterspell work if I never pass priority with the spell on the stack? So he passes, B passes, because, like I said, anyone where someone's playing Raging Goblin, this card probably isn't in the format. But I did forget about Gutshot. Phyrexian mana, making spells free. Making spells costs 0 mana. It's broken. Why do they keep doing it? Yes, so, sorry. He's cast Raging Goblin and he's passed priority. B passes priority back. Now we're in the same situation before. 2 players have just passed priority in succession, so what happens? Well, the stack isn't empty, so what happens is that Raging Goblin resolves, and A gets priority again. So he's still in his main phase, even though a double priority pass just happened. And we can go, right, what can we do? Well, they've used their land drop for the turn, they haven't really got any other options left, so they pass priority, B passes back, and we've finished the main phase, we move on to the combat phase, which begins with the beginning of combat step. A doesn't want to do anything before attacking, so passes to B, B passes right back, there's nothing to happen there. The beginning of combat step is actually a very important step in the game, because there's lots of abilities that only really make sense there, such as tapping down creatures, because otherwise people could tap down creatures and they then go, but because I'm still in my main phase, I can now play this hasty creature, and he can't be tapped and run him in. Something along those lines. Beginning of combat step is also very important because it's the last opportunity you've got to activate lands such as these, which can turn into creatures. Because, pardon me, oh dear, let a burp out on stream. Do apologise. I think I'm after the watershed, that's all right. Yes, so having both passed priority in the beginning of combat step, we're going to go to A's declare attacker step. And something important happens as soon as we get to player A's declare attackers step. If you look at Comprehensive Rules 508, we have another one of these turn-based actions. There's an action that happens just because we've entered a particular part of the turn. And A must declare attackers. Again, I'll ask the question, who's got priority at this point? And again, the answer is nobody has priority at this point. You don't need priority to declare attackers. It's something that happens. It's a turn-based action. It always happens at this part of the turn. And whilst we're thinking about attacking, exactly what we're going to declare as attackers, bearing in mind all of our attack restrictions and requirements that we covered last week, you've got to, A gets to declare attackers at this point, and nobody can do anything in the middle of it. Most importantly, you can't activate this Mutavault at this point either. If you have to have activated it in the beginning of combat step if you want to use it. Anyway, we're not on the Mutavault question just yet. We just have this Raging Goblin. And that can attack. There's no attacking or blocking restriction or requirements to worry about, so he just gets declared as an attacker. And A doesn't want to do anything, B doesn't want to do anything, so we move to the declare blockers step. And another turn-based action happens. B would declare his blockers at this point. Well, he doesn't have anything to block with, so he declares no blocks. But after B has declared no blocks, who do you think has priority at that point? And after that little slightly pregnant pause for you to think about it, it's A. It's still A. It's very natural to think that just because B had the turn-based action of declaring blockers, it's very natural to think that B would have priority immediately after they've done that. But it's not true. A has it because the active player always gets priority first. B's lack of blockers is no surprise, so A doesn't have any priority, anything to do with their priority, so they pass. B passes. We're finished with the declaration of blockers. We can move to the combat damage step. And the Raging Goblin's 1 damage gets assigned and dealt, and then A receives priority again. We've covered combat damage before. We've covered assigning and dealing combat damage as a separate stream. I don't remember which episode number, but it's way back there. But yeah, after we finished with the declare blockers step, we're going to move to the combat damage step, and those things happen in order. Damage assignment, damage resolution, and then priority. So often something's actually going to happen as a result of a state-based action in the middle there, but again, we covered those before. So A gets priority and he passes, B passes, and we have the end of combat step in which almost nothing ever happens, but it's still a very important step to have. A passes, B passes, and we go into the second main phase. It's an important thing in Magic that there's 2 main phases. You've got one before combat, you've got one after combat. It allows you to keep mana up during combat, so you can fake that you're going to do stuff later, whether you are or not, or you fake combat tricks, you do all this bluffing kind of thing, and it's what makes Magic so great. The very existence, very existence of a post-combat main phase. It does all of these things. And again, A passes, B passes, and we start the ending phase, which starts with the end step. A passes, B passes, and we go to the cleanup step. And because nothing happens in the cleanup step, A doesn't get priority at all. In the cleanup step, nobody usually gets priority. The cleanup step is where if your hand size has grown to larger than your hand size, and in that cleanup step you'd be forced to discard down. Stuff can also happen in the cleanup step if I'm trying to think of an example and I'm failing. But if a state-based action gets, I don't want to say triggered, but if suddenly has something to do because in the cleanup steps some kind of effect ended, then the players will get priority to do stuff then, which is kind of cool. Actually, that reminds me about one of the a slight bug. I'm going to call it a bug in the rules because I heard a higher level judge call it a bug in the rules once. Involves Orim's Chant and Basking Root Waller. I'm going to go fetch pictures of those cards and you try and tell me what it is I'm going to say about Orim's-Chant and Basking Rootwaller, given what I've just told you about the cleanup step. It's a pretty funky little interaction. And who's been keeping track of the number of priority passes? How many priority passes has there been in this mythical mountain goblin in for one go turn? How many priority passes has there been? It's quite a few. It really is quite a few. Okay, let's expose this Orim's-Chant Rootwaller. Here we go. Oh, sorry about all the card flicking that happened there. I should learn to control my my transitions. Orim's-Chant is a card that says that target player can't play spells this turn. Can't be done. Do you want to play spells? No, not allowed. In the cleanup step, this turn effects, they end. And normally that's absolutely fine because the effect ends and neither player receives priority. So you don't get priority to play a spell right after the effect from Orim's-Chant that told you can't play spells has worn off. So the spell works. Orim's-Chant prevents you casting anything for the entire turn. But there's, somewhat amusingly, if you had more than 7 cards in your hand, and you were forced to discard, and you discarded a card with Madness, then you'd be able to cast this Madness thing, because a discard happened, you would get priority to do something, and with that priority, or with the fact that Madness is, you have the option with Madness to make something trigger, and you can exercise your right to cast the Rootwaller through Madness. The Orim's-Chant effect is already worn off, and you get to sneak this in the cleanup step when you wouldn't normally receive priority. Nice little bug in the rules there. I doubt it's ever relevant, but hey, Orim's-Chant, cool card. Got a chance to make use of it on the stream there, which I'm quite happy with. So yes, I forget now, having gone through that, exactly how many priority passes we've been through, but I think we can agree it's a lot. And this is a brilliant example of quite how much goes on in a Magic turn when player A, in 7 words or so, goes Mountain, Raging Goblin, in for 1, go. That's all their turn takes. That's their entire turn rolled up in one entire thing. And it's just taken me something like half an hour to go through that first turn with all the different tangents that I went on. But because of all the explicit priority passing that I've done as I've been going to and fro in each of the steps. A couple of other smaller points I want to mention about priority passes. Firstly, there's a rule nowadays that says that if you're floating mana and you pass priority, you are supposed to declare what mana it is you're floating, which might be relevant to you, like, I don't know, Red-Blue Storm players in Modern these days will be comboing off with lots of mana about. You are supposed to announce how much mana you're floating every time you pass priority. Also, in this first turn example, because I put Raging Goblin on the table, nice little hasty creature, we had an attacker declared. If there wasn't an attacker declared, there actually wouldn't be a declare blockers or a combat damage step. So we would manage to skip a couple of sets of priority passes out, which is nice. So, I've gone on quite a lot about the rules to do with priority passes, when they happen, what happens at priority passes, and all sorts of timing things. I've got some nice, interesting examples of where priority actually it does something. There are tricks you can do with priority. More accurately, there are tricks that you probably shouldn't let your opponent do with priority. I'm going to reveal a few of them, and let's see if you recognise any of these from your own play. So here's I will admit again, I'm coming from an old 2009 article. My card examples might be slightly out of date for you guys. EDH players might recognise these guys. I've got Sakura Tribe Elder and Eternal Witness. So, Sakura Tribe Elder's in play. Let's say he was my 2-drop. And I want to cast Eternal Witness. It's going to cost 3. What Eternal Witness is going to do when it comes into play is it's going to return a card from my graveyard to my hand. I get to target one. So once the Eternal Witness enters play, I have to target something that's in the graveyard at that point and put it in my hand. Now, the question is, right now I have nothing in my graveyard. And what I want to do is I want to make the best use of the fact that I have a Sakura Tribe Elder in play. And I want to sacrifice the Sakura Tribe Elder, go and search myself up a land, play Eternal Witness, get the Sakura Tribe Elder back into my hand. I basically want to get my land and get the second use out of my Elder. But I look across the table, and my tricksy little opponent has a couple of islands in play. He's got his blue mana up, and I'm frightened of a counterspell. What I want to do is I only actually want to sacrifice the Elder if I know I'm going to be able to get it back. I want to be 100% sure that my Eternal Witness is not going to be countered when I sacrifice Sakura Tribe Elder. So how can I do this? Here's one way a player might try to do it. Sakura Tribe Elder's in play, and they go something like this. They go, Eternal Witness? Yeah, okay. Sacrifice my Sakura Tribe Elder, Witness comes into play, go and fetch a land, pick up the Elder. Did anyone spot the mistake? I probably clued you into it by saying, here's how a player might try to do it. Because it doesn't work that way. It's not allowed. Sakura Tribe Elder's in play. If I cast Eternal Witness, I go through all the motions of casting Eternal Witness, and I've got Eternal Witness on the stack. So on the stack, the ability hasn't triggered yet. I've got 2 options. I can either pass priority to player B, which obviously I will have to do at some point, because if they want to counter it, then they're going to need priority to cast a counterspell. So I can either pass priority them or not. I can retain priority, and with the Eternal Witness on the stack, I can sacrifice the Tribe Elder. That's fine. I sacrifice the Tribe Elder, I go and fetch a land, but I still don't know whether my Eternal Witness is going to resolve. So let's try it the other way around. I pass priority, and I give my opponent the chance to counter it. And they go, no, I'm not going to counter it, and they pass priority back. Now, I want to sacrifice the Sakura Tribe Elder because I want it to be in the graveyard when the Eternal Witness comes into play. But I can't, because I had the Eternal Witness on the stack, and I passed priority. I said I'm not going to be doing anything. And my opponent passed priority. He said he's not going to be doing anything. So we both said we're not going to be doing anything. So the Eternal Witness resolves, and it's in play, and immediately coming into play, before I would get priority, we check for triggers, we go to target a card in the graveyard, there are no legal targets, and the ability doesn't even go on the stack. So, is there a safe way to sack Sakura Tribe Elder, get a land, play Eternal Witness, get the Elder back in the face of blue mana? Is there a safe way to do this? No, there is not. It's not possible. And I'm sure there are some slightly naive blue players out there that will have let their opponents get away with this at some point in the past. But there we go. Okay, here's another contentious one, I will say. And I think I've tried to pop this one up on Cockatrice for you guys. Let's see if this works. I'll show you the cards that I'm mentioning. There's a Knight of Meadowgrain in play. It's just a first strike lifelinker. This was a real scenario that I saw at one point. Edited down slightly. I'm just using that. He may as well be a Grizzly Bears. It's just a Grizzly Bears in white with a couple of extra abilities. The cards that are interesting are Mutavault, which I showed you earlier in the stream. It's a land that for 1 mana can become a 2/2 creature, and being a creature, it can go and attack people. And the other card that's interesting is Cryptic Command. It's one of these funky modal spells that's got 4 modes for you to choose from, and you get to choose 2 of them. And one of the choices, the relevant choice in this one, is to tap all the creatures your opponents control. So, I'm going to give this a go. How much of this can you see? Hopefully you can tell that I've got my Knight of Medegraine in play, and I've got 2 Mutavaults in play, and I've got 2 planes sat here, so I'm ready to have the mana available to be activating those. My opponent's got nothing except the 4 islands, ominously untapped. This is where Cockatrice shows the hand, and because I've got it as a 2-player local game, I can see that there's a Cryptic Command in hand, so I know there's some shenanigans. And my opponent's on 2 life. So the question is, how do I kill this guy? Like, knowing that he's got a Cryptic Command in play, how can I kill him? Now, the wrong thing to do would be to animate the Mutavaults. The right thing to do would be, in the beginning of combat step. I've got phase timers over here. So I'm in my main phase. Do I do anything on my main phase? No, I don't. I pass, and he probably passes as well, because he knows that the beginning of combat step is the right time to play tappy kind of things. So we move to the beginning of combat. Do I do anything? No, I don't. I don't want to activate the Mutavaults at this point because he's on 2 life, and so just attacking with Knight of Medegraine will be fine. So my opponent goes, uh-oh, SpaghettiOs, or something along those lines. I don't know what blue players would say, really. Problem, if I pass priority, we're going to go to the declaration of attack, and stuff's going to happen. In fact, actually, have I paused this example up? Is not paying the Cryptic Command the right thing? Huh. Well, my original example was, let's say blue player goes, uh-oh, tap these 4 islands, play the Cryptic Command, tapping your Knight of Medegraine, and drawing a card. This resolves. Now, I'm sitting here thinking, am I buggered? Have I completely messed up? Is there a problem here? Because I passed in the beginning of combat step, so surely I don't have a chance to activate my Mutavaults now. Well, of course you do. What you do is, because the Cryptic Command was played, then when we both passed priority afterwards, it resolved, and I get priority back on the empty stack, and then I get to go, animate one of these things, and now I'm going to pass priority, and they pass back, and I go to attack, and boom, done. I think I might have missed a line of play when I thought of this example. Let's reset. Different line of play then. I go to start combat, I pass, then my opponent passes, and we go to attack. And I'm like, hooray, I'm in the clear. I attack with my Knight of Medegraine. And there's nothing, he can't cast a Cryptic Command to tap me at that point. Because I've gone straight to the attack, or straight to the turn-based action that is declaring attackers. So he can't tap me down at that point, but I've forgotten completely that, of course, he can cast the Cryptic Command, and there's another mode here, which is return target opponent to his own hand. So he can bounce that back to my hand. And once that's resolved, I've already declared my attack. So he survived. Tricksy blue player survived. So the right play must be, let's go, instead of combat, I animate no, don't tap it. I animate one of the Mutavaults. And then I pass. And then he can tap my team down, but if he taps my team down, then I get priority back to attack with the second Mutavault. If he doesn't tap my team down and we go into attackers, I've got 2 attackers, he can only possibly bounce one and I get through with the other. Yes. Did I get there? Did I do it? But then they bounce the second man. What second man? Oh, can they bounce it anyway? Oh, target permanent to its owner's hand. They can still kill me. Damn this flipping Cryptic Command. Okay, I'm going to admit defeat at this point. I can't find a way to successfully navigate this turn with the blue player dying. Darn. Nobody told me about this at the time when I wrote the article. Hey, I've grown as a player since 2009. Is how I'll take that one. So yes, cryptic command's amazing. So it turns out I'm going to need another guy. Do I have another guy in this deck? Did I set it up with a guy? Yeah, look, I've got Eternal Witness now. Haha! Now you're dead. What's the right play now? I've got two guys. I pass thinking that I'll get to attack with both. And if he taps, even if he bounces another one, then I can animate a Mutavault and get in. Yeah, that'll do. But, yes, of course, I just drew extra cards so that I can win the game, and I played an Eternal Witness with no green mana and all sorts of other cheaty shenanigans. So, I think I've just made a very good example of why successfully being able to navigate the priority passes in combat is a useful skill. Now, someone in the chat mentioned the communication policy here, which is very interesting, and I'm very, very happy that that's been brought up, because I want to talk about the beginning of combat step. And the reason I want to talk about it is because there is a tournament shortcut that says something along the lines of, I'll look the exact words up in a moment, it says something along the lines of a request to move to attacks, when someone says like attacks or something like that, is requesting to pass priority until we get to the declare attacker step, something like that, isn't it? No, wait, no, I need to look it up because I'm going to get it wrong if I try to just spout. It's like if I'm in my main phase and I say attacks, then what I'm offering to do is pass priority in my main phase and also pass priority again at the beginning of combat until we get to your priority in beginning of combat. So if you say okay, then the next thing that has to happen is that I have to declare an attack. Now, this is when you're ambiguous. When you say attacks or combat or some dippy kind of thing there, if you're in your main phase and you explicitly say, I am passing priority, then when they pass priority back, we're going to be in the beginning of combat. If you say, I would like to go to the beginning of combat step, super explicit like that, then we're going to go to the beginning of combat step. If you say pretty much anything else, then a judge will rule that you have already gone to the beginning of combat step, and when they pass, you are in your declare attacker step. Now this is important because I want you to be in the position of the blue player here, who has a card in hand, but this time it's not Cryptic Command. It might be, Cryptic Command might be here, but it's not. Of course, the white player in this situation doesn't know that. So he's trying to come up with his safe line of play. I need the Eternal Witness back, don't I? Because we figured out that'd work. He's trying to come up with his safe line of play. He shouldn't be allowed to go, I want to attack. Blue player has no option, because he's only got a land in hand, to say yeah, sure, go ahead and attack. And then this guy can go, all right, animate my Mutavaults and attack with the team. The white player shouldn't be allowed to get away with that. That should be risky, animating Mutavaults. It doesn't come up particularly often, but it used to in the Cryptic Command format. Has anyone got any more questions about that part of the shortcut policy, like tournament communication policy? Because I feel this one's quite important, and I'll definitely come back to it. If you put some questions up in the chat, I'll revisit those. But another couple of examples I want to get to. Back to Cryptic Command, but this time Demigod of Revenge. Again, these two were in the same format. They were in the same block constructed format at one point. Demigod of Revenge is interesting ability is that when you play it, I believe it's say when you cast it these days. When you cast Demigod of Revenge, Return all cards named Demigod of Revenge from your graveyard to play. Excuse the 10 o'clock cow there. The interesting thing is that when you cast this spell, its triggered ability will go on the stack above it. Now, it's not a targeted trigger, so it will go on the stack regardless of whether there's any Demigod of Revenges in the graveyard. So I want you to think how this works. I cast Demigod of Revenge. You cast Cryptic Command, intending to counter it. If you do that, what I'm going to say is, sure, my Demigod of Revenge gets countered. I'm going to put it in the graveyard. Then I'm going to resolve the triggered ability and put, all cards named Demigod of Revenge from my graveyard into play. Brilliant. So the Demigod of Revenge you thought you just countered, I'm going to pop into play. How, as a judge, are you going to resolve this dispute? Policy-wise, I believe, and I'm pretty sure this was backed up at the time, although it's not kind of written in stone anywhere. The onus is on the blue player to be really quite clear about when they are casting their counterspell. If they want to counter this Demigod of Revenge properly, they are going to have to say, after the trigger's resolved, I want to counter the Demigod. If we start assuming that priority passes happen implicitly without there being any kind of tournament shortcut involved or any kind of prior arrangement, if we allow silence or something like that to imply that priority passes happened, then we end up in a bit of a bad place. So, if the sequence literally goes Demigod, counter it, then that Demigod of Revenge can come back into play. Only if the black and or red player actually wants to force the issue. Obviously, there are some very sporting players out there who will go Demigod, and you'll go counter it, and they'll go, yeah, sure, okay. It's an entirely legal resolution of the stack because whilst nobody's mentioned the trigger that's in there, it's perfectly valid to go, well, what could have happened is that they assumed that the trigger resolved. Both players are happy with that. Then the counter happens and the Demigod goes to the graveyard and we move on with the game. It's a perfectly legal interpretation of what happened. It's only if the black-red player wants to kick up a stink, basically, and go, nah, you counted it wrong, I get my guy back, then I'm going to side with him because I believe it's down to the blue player to be specific about when they're casting their Cryptic Command. And if they're not specific about it, I have no choice but to assume that the Cryptic Command is on the stack on top of the trigger. It doesn't make any sense for any. There's no policy reason that it would make sense that the Cryptic Command could be in any other position on the stack. A similar example to do with the Ballista Squad, it can deal X damage to target attacking or blocking creature. So a similar example would be, let's try the Cockatrice window again. Did I put a Ballista Squad in this deck? Find it. I can cheat savagely with this. No, I didn't put a Ballista Squad in the deck. That's weak. So let's just assume that this white blobby thing here is a Ballista Squad, even though it isn't. And let's get some of these cards back off the hand into the library so they're not distracting. So some guy attacks, and I've got some cards in hand. And I go, sure, fine, I'll take 2 damage, boink boink. I've taken the 2 damage, so we've definitely done the combat damage part of the combat damage step. And now I think a bit. I haven't said anything, but I'm thinking. And everybody watching the table, there's a couple of spectators around. I'm such a great Magic player that I attract spectators. All the spectators have, they know, it's obvious from my hand movements, from what I'm thinking about doing, that I am thinking about what to play in my second main phase. In fact, I've been thinking for 30, 45 seconds, maybe. Maybe I'm even verging on a slow play warning or something along those lines. I've been thinking that long about it. And then I go, activate my ballista squad and shoot the attacking creature. So go back into ballista squad, X and Y, tap it, ballista squad deals X damage to target attacking or blocking creature. Now the interesting thing is that it has to target an attacking creature. If we're actually in my second main phase, I couldn't possibly activate this because there are no attacking creatures once we're outside of the combat phase. So the question is, does my 45-second, 60-second think, where it's quite obvious to everyone around that I'm thinking about what to do in my second main phase, does that imply we're actually in my second main phase and therefore I can't activate the ballista squad? Well, let's bring it to a head. The other player goes, Judge, he can't activate that now, we're in his second main phase. Again, I would be forced to rule that I cannot accept silence as a priority pass. Nothing has happened since we wrote the 2 damage down to indicate that we're not in the combat phase anymore. So I'm going to assume we are. You have to be. And a final example here, I touched upon this earlier, but Scoop Mob, a Zendikar rare, said at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 5 or more lands, then put 4 +1/+1 counters on Scoop Mob. And the question that came up back in the day was, can I Harrow and to get my 5th land in play and get it to trigger? It's quite an easy one, hopefully, for everyone who's watching this one. No, you can't. There's no point you could do it. As soon as you untap, you might want to try to cast the Harrow in your untap step as soon as you've untapped, but we know that players don't get priority at that point. So without priority in the untap step, you couldn't possibly cast a Harrow. So the next thing that happens is the beginning of the upkeep. And because of the if condition, if you control 5 or more lands, put the counters on. If that if condition isn't true, then the ability won't trigger, and casting the Harrow in your upkeep will be too late. There's no way to have 4 lands in play, untap with those 4 lands, and somehow cast the Harrow in time to get the Scoop Mob to trigger. And I think with that, I've covered everything I intended to on priority. Any questions? I'm just reading through some chat from Paul Crosby saying about language shouldn't matter. Yeah, I agree with this in some sense. There's definitely some case in which it could be a little bit weird. Am I going to the beginning of combat step? Am I going to the attack step? And at a Grand Prix level event, a very international event, where you could have a Japanese guy one side and an Italian guy one side, and neither of them speak English, so communicating with the English judge, me, is going to be hard. Communicating with each other is going to be hard because they share no language. Then how are we going to resolve this kind of thing? Yes, I totally agree with the basic principle that language issues shouldn't make it hard. Well, no, sorry, it's going to be hard to communicate. Language issues shouldn't create areas that you can manipulate to your benefit. But having said that, I absolutely believe, and I'll just pop back to the cockatrice window. If you're in your first main phase, there is a reason for you to go to your beginning of combat phase and do something before the attack. So it absolutely should be possible for me to go to my beginning of combat phase. I absolutely support that anything that's in any way ambiguous will take me straight to my attack phase, my attack step, the declare attacker step of the combat phase. But there has to be a way for me to go to beginning of combat, right? Like it's a totally legal move. I must be able to do this sometime. Now, how I communicate that to my poor misunderstanding opponent is kind of another question, but I really do believe it should be possible. Anyway, we can hash that one out in real life at some point when we're not on a stream where I'm the only one who gets to talk and you only get to type back. Cool. Right. Whoops. Not ready to sign off yet. Are we done? Are we happy with priority? I've rambled quite a lot today. I'm kind of aware of that, even though I've been going through like an old article that it's been something of a favourite topic of mine. I think we got some useful examples out of it. I think we got some interesting rules like cleared up. I love priority as a concept because it's something that Magic players can get through games without really knowing anything about, but that judges need to in order to resolve disputes. And disputes are really where judges get involved with the game, especially at Grand Prix level kind of thing. Are we done? Are we done? You've got about 10 seconds left to put a question in the chat whilst I close off the stream, saying thank you very much for watching. I need to talk about next week because next week my children are on their half-term holidays, so we're going to be visiting. We're going to be visiting the in-laws. I'm going to be heading to Devon, having a lovely holiday over there. So I won't be doing a formal stream next week. The only reason I say I'm not doing a formal stream is because of a potential judge conference like later in the year. I want to do streaming from a judge conference if I possibly can. So I want to investigate the possibility of streaming from like I'm on my iMac at the moment, and I love the ability to flash cards up on screen. What I want to do is investigate the possibility of streaming off of an iPad or an iPhone even. So I'm going to try and do that next week. So there'll be a very, very brief stream. I'll do it at the same time, just so that I can get some audience members, but I'm not planning on covering a topic specifically. On the other hand, I'm going to be at GP Turin at the weekend, so I'll probably have some things I want to say from the weekend. So yeah, tune in at 9 o'clock. I will be attempting to do a stream from not my broadband connection and not on this computer, which is interesting for me, but maybe slightly less interesting for you. After that, I think I'm finally going to get around to tackling layers, which some of you should be happy about. So yes, next week, pop in for a little iPad stream test. Week after, expect some layer stuff. Brilliant. Thank you for listening. See you again soon. Bye-bye.